Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a topic that literally affects every single one of us, every time we swipe a card or pay a bill. We're talking about inflation. We're going to demystify the complex world of macroeconomic inflation, breaking down its causes, its very real costs, and the cures that economists and policymakers use to try and tame it. So if you've ever wondered why your grocery bill seems to only go in one direction, well, you're absolutely in the right place. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, what is inflation? Second, measuring the price tag. Third, winners, losers, and fallout. Fourth, demand pull versus cost push. And finally, taming the inflation beast. Section 1. What is inflation? Let's define the core concept. Okay, so the foundational definition of inflation is a continuous and considerable rise in prices in general. Now, I want you to notice those two specific words, continuous and considerable. This is absolutely crucial. A one-time jump in the price of coffee because of a bad harvest, that's not inflation. A tiny, barely noticeable uptick in prices, that isn't really the macroeconomic inflation we worry about either. We're talking about an ongoing, significant process that affects prices across the board, in general. It's a neutral, objective definition of an economic process.
Moving on to Section 2, measuring the price tag, CPI versus PPI.
So how do economists actually track this invisible, ongoing force out in the real world? Well, they use two main indicators. First up is the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. Think of this as your cost of living. Economists create a representative basket of goods and services that a typical household buys, groceries, fuel, housing, and they track the price of that specific basket over time. On the flip side, we have the Producer Price Index, or PPI. This measures the prices of goods and services at their very first significant commercial transaction, like right as they leave the factory gate or the farm. PPI is actually a super helpful leading indicator because it kind of gives us a sneak peek at what might happen to the CPI down the line.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how simple the actual math behind the scary headlines can be. To find the inflation rate, you just take the current CPI, subtract the previous CPI, divide that by the previous CPI, and multiply by 100 to get a percentage. So let's take December 2020 and 2019, for example. If the December 2020 CPI was 117.3 and the December 2019 CPI was 113.8, the difference is 3.5. You divide that 3.5 by the old 113.8, multiply by 100, and boom, you get an inflation rate of roughly 3.1% for that period. It takes all this abstract math and grounds it into a concrete percentage we can all easily understand.
But as you probably know, inflation isn't always just a steady 3%, and the extremes are incredibly distinct. Hyperinflation literally destroys economies. That's when inflation is excessively high and persistent. Then there's stagflation, which is just a nightmare scenario. It's a paralyzing mix of high inflation, high unemployment, and stagnant economic growth. Deflation is a continuously falling general price level, so essentially negative inflation. And finally, disinflation just means prices are still rising, but at a steadily declining rate.
Section 3. Winners, losers, and fallout. The distributional effects.
Because these macroeconomic numbers have incredible human stakes, we really have to ask ourselves, who actually pays the price during inflation? And wait, does anyone actually win? It's a super common assumption that everybody suffers equally when prices rise, but the economic reality is far more complex and, frankly, a bit unfair.
Surprisingly, debtors actually gain during inflation. Crazy, right? But think about it. They're paying back their loans with money that's worth less than when they originally borrowed it. Conversely, creditors, the folks lending the money, lose out big time. Demographically speaking, younger people often gain because their wages might adjust upward over time, while the elderly on fixed incomes and pensions lose severe purchasing power. Oh, and let's not forget the government, which often gains through something called bracket creep. This happens when your nominal income goes up to match inflation, bumping you into a higher tax bracket, even though your real wealth hasn't increased at all. It's basically a massive hidden tax.
Beyond just who wins and loses individually, inflation exacts massive economic, social, and political costs on a society. Economically, it discourages saving, simply because your money loses value just sitting in the bank. It also stimulates speculative activity rather than productive, real-world business building. Socially and politically, especially in poorer countries, persistent inflation causes deep dissatisfaction, conflict, and even social unrest. And honestly, the scariest part? When people simply expect high inflation, they proactively demand higher wages and raise prices, making it a self-fulfilling prophecy that can snowball right into hyperinflation.
Section 4. Demand pull versus cost push. Two distinct causes. Let's start with demand pull inflation. Basically, aggregate demand shifts upwards while aggregate supply stays completely unchanged up to a certain point. This happens when there's simply too much money chasing too few goods. The demand literally pulls the general price level up. As overall demand increases, prices just follow suit, stepping higher and higher.
So, the crucial question here is, what causes that demand to spike in the first place? Well, it can be an increase in any major spending component. That means consumer spending, investment spending, government spending, or even increased export earnings. To combat demand pull inflation, central banks and governments bring out restrictive policies. They deliberately try to cool down the economy by increasing interest rates, reducing the quantity of money, or bumping up taxes to reduce spending power. The painful side effect, though, is that overall production, income, and employment often fall as a result.
Now, cost-push inflation is a completely different beast. Here, demand remains entirely unchanged. Instead, rising production costs actively push supply down. And this brilliantly illustrates that stagflation nightmare we mentioned earlier. As production becomes more expensive, overall supply shrinks, shifting inward. This leads to higher prices and lower economic output happening at the exact same time.
Cost push is driven by things that make doing business more expensive. We're talking aggressive wage and salary increases, higher costs for imported capital, decreased productivity, or sudden supply shocks like natural disasters. And combating cost push inflation is incredibly tricky. You can't just hike interest rates and hope it goes away. You actually have to implement policies to keep wages and profit margins under control, and you have to find ways to actively increase the productivity of the entire workforce. Section 5. Taming the Inflation Beast. Anti-inflation policy. So how do central banks practically fight back against both types of inflation? 3 to 6%. That right there is the specific inflation target range adopted by the South African Reserve Bank, or SARB. It's really important to understand that modern central banks usually do not aim for 0% inflation. 0% often flirts with deflation, which, as we know, can freeze economic growth entirely. Instead, they aim for managed, predictable stability, keeping inflation strictly confined within this 3 to 6% sweet spot. The SARB formally adopted this inflation targeting approach back in February 2000. It relies on a few key pillars: public announcement of quantitative targets, making price stability the ultimate objective of monetary policy, and using instruments like the repo rate to adjust the flow of money. Critically, it also relies heavily on transparency and accountability. By telling the public exactly what they're doing, central banks hope to firmly anchor the public's inflation expectations, preventing that self-fulfilling prophecy of panic we talked about. Now, this approach brings real-world trade-offs. The advantages are pretty clear. It reduces uncertainty, enhances sound economic planning, improves accountability, and limits the unchecked discretion of policymakers. But the disadvantages, they can be severe. It's a highly complicated approach. If the Reserve Bank's forecasts are wrong, they lose vital public credibility. And most painfully, the primary weapon they use, a high repo rate, increases the cost of capital across the board. This makes it super expensive for businesses to borrow and grow, which can negatively affect overall economic growth and drive up unemployment. Which leaves us with this provocative thought to conclude our explainer. Is the high cost of borrowing a fair price to pay to tame the inflation beast? Or does the medicine sometimes do more harm to overall economic growth than the disease itself? It's a delicate, high-stakes balancing act that policymakers navigate every single day, and it's one that directly impacts the value of the money in your pocket. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer on inflation. Keep questioning the numbers, and I'll see you next time.